You could feel it before you even understood it. Something was changing, not just in hip-hop, but in the energy of the culture itself. Drake fans were furious. Nicki Minaj fans jumped into the mix. Travis Scott's name started trending for all the wrong reasons. People were arguing, posting memes, calling out hypocrisy, deleting tweets, reposting old interviews. The chaos was beautiful and ugly at the same time. Because what really happened wasn't just about a concert or a chart position. It was about the truth finally catching up. For years, we'd been told who the biggest was, who ran the numbers, who had the hits, the features, the money, the lifestyle. But now, out of nowhere, the energy flipped. And that flip didn't come from a viral TikTok dance or a streaming hack. It came from something real. See, the funny thing about fame? It's addictive, but it's fragile. When you build your empire on numbers, those numbers can start to control you. When your brand is bigger than your art, every slip feels like an earthquake. And that's exactly what was happening. For years, Drake had been untouchable. He was the commercial giant, the hitmaker who blurred genres and dominated every chart. Nicki Minaj had her own army, the Barbs, who could turn any Twitter thread into a war zone. Travis Scott was the festival god. His shows were chaos in motion, his brand bigger than music itself. But suddenly, they all looked nervous, because someone quietly, without gimmicks or drama, had just changed the entire game. It didn't happen overnight. It had been building for years. For too long, hip-hop had been about streams, playlists, and algorithms. For too long, artistry had been treated like marketing strategy. And now, someone had come along reminding everyone what soul actually felt like. No auto-tune armor, no clout-baiting features, just bars, storytelling, and a stage presence that made the internet feel small. But before we go further, support me by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. The last few years had been weird for rap. The old guard was still clinging to relevance, but the new wave didn't care about respect, only virality. Drake was fighting to stay ahead by dropping project after project, sometimes sounding like he was chasing trends that used to chase him. Travis was trying to rebuild after controversy, but something about his energy felt hollow. Even Nicki's legendary fanbase seemed tired, like they'd been defending a throne nobody was sitting on. Meanwhile, the fans? They were starving for something real. That's why, when this artist announced his next move, the internet didn't just react, it exploded. Because deep down, everyone knew. This wasn't just another show. It was a message, a challenge, a reminder of what greatness actually looks like when it's not hiding behind PR and playlisting. You already know who I'm talking about. Kendrick Lamar, the man who didn't need chaos to stay relevant. The man who didn't chase trends, he created them. The man who disappeared for years, only to come back and make the entire rap world rearrange its priorities. This was the shift we'd all been waiting for. Because when Kendrick stepped back onto that stage, it wasn't just another performance. It was a declaration that hip-hop's heart still beats for truth, that artistry still matters, that you can't fake greatness, not forever. But here's the thing, that was only the beginning, because what Kendrick did next turned this shift into a full-blown revolution. He didn't just perform, he commanded. He didn't just tour, he transformed arenas into spiritual experiences. When Kendrick Lamar's Grand National Tour was first announced, nobody realized what was about to happen. People thought it would just be another run, another big artist doing big shows for big money. From the very first show, you could tell something had shifted, not just on stage, but in the air. It wasn't about celebrity anymore. It wasn't about who had the flashiest features or the most reposted outfits. This was about authenticity. Kendrick wasn't performing to prove a point. He was performing to remind people, What real artistry looks like when it's not clouded by algorithms and approval. While all this was happening, other rappers were scrambling. Drake was trying to recapture momentum, teasing songs, posting mysterious captions, even leaning on old controversies to stay in the conversation. The same tricks that used to work suddenly felt outdated, because people weren't inspired by drama anymore. They wanted depth. Even Travis Scott, who once ruled the stage as hip-hop's festival king, started feeling the pressure. After Utopia, fans expected something world-changing, but the rollout felt mechanical, almost soulless. It was as if Travis had become a prisoner of his own image. Big stages, flames, chaos, but no heart. Every time Kendrick hit a stage, it felt like he was talking directly to the industry. Without saying a single word, he was telling every label, every artist, every executive, "You've confused popularity with purpose." You could feel that message ripple through the culture. Suddenly, conversations changed. Artists started reflecting. Fans started reevaluating who they really respected versus who they just tolerated. That's what true influence does. It reshapes perspective. And Kendrick wasn't just making music, he was shaping mindset. The industry reacts. Behind the scenes, executives were watching closely. Every record label, every festival promoter, every streaming service. They could see the tide turning. They could see the numbers rising not because of manipulation, but because of movement. And that scared them, because Kendrick represented something that couldn't be monetized. Authenticity. You can't fake that. You can't manufacture that. You either have it, or you don't. And in this new era, Kendrick proved that real will always outlast relevant. By the time the tour reached South America, the hype had reached fever pitch. Rumors were flying. Fans were camping out for days. Even local news outlets were covering the phenomenon. Everyone wanted to see what Kendrick would do next, what message he'd deliver, how far this energy could really go. Nobody knew it yet, but he was about to deliver one of the most important performances of his career. A moment that would redefine what it means to be global. Because Argentina wasn't just a concert, it was an awakening. For years, Drake had been hip-hop's center of mass. Everything orbited around him. Trends, sounds, collaborations, even award shows. But suddenly it all tilted. And now, people were watching Kendrick like he was the sun. Drake's empire, built on charisma, consistency, and crowd-pleasing records, suddenly looked fragile next to Kendrick's raw authenticity. The hits still charted, sure, but they didn't move people the same way anymore. And that's the thing. When culture moves, the charts don't matter. People do. Meanwhile, Kendrick wasn't even talking. No interviews. No teasing new music. No dramatic statements. Just silence. But his silence was louder than anyone else's words. Because when you've said everything through your art, you don't need to explain. The world listens differently when they know you mean it. The night Kendrick's MetLife performance went viral, you could almost feel the internet hold its breath. Because it wasn't just a show, it was a statement. Thousands of people chanting lyrics that meant something. A crowd moving in unison. Not because of a catchy hook, but because they felt the message. Even celebrities in attendance, the kind who never post unless it's about themselves, were humbled. After Kendrick's grand national tour left the industry in shock, the people who once ruled the charts started making moves. Not loud ones, not public ones, but quiet, deliberate, behind-the-scenes plays. This wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about control. Because when Kendrick shifted the culture toward meaning, toward integrity, toward depth, he threatened the foundation that the mainstream industry had built its empire on. And for a lot of people, that was bad for business. Every movement reaches a breaking point. Every silence ends, one way or another. For months, the world had been waiting for Kendrick's next move. the rumors, the subliminals, the headlines. It all led to one burning question. When will he respond? The industry was betting on it, counting on it. Because if Kendrick answered the noise, he'd be stepping back into their arena, their system, their rules. But that's not what he did. He didn't respond with a song. He didn't post a rant. He didn't even drop a diss. He did something far more powerful. He created a moment. But here's the craziest part. The industry still doesn't realize it lost. They think the storm is over, that the noise has quieted down, that things will go back to the way they were. But that's the illusion. Because once people wake up, they don't fall back asleep. And right now, hip-hop isn't asleep anymore. It's awake. You ever notice how some moments never really end? They just echo. They ripple through time. Long after the noise dies down, long after the headlines vanish. And somewhere in that silence, they keep whispering the truth. That's what this was. Not just a feud, not just a cultural shift, but an awakening. Because what Kendrick Lamar did wasn't just about proving who's the best rapper. It was about reminding us why we listen in the first place. Why words matter. Why stories matter. Why truth matters. He took a culture drowning in noise and made it quiet. Just long enough for people to hear again. And that's the thing about moments like this. They don't fade. They evolve. They become the DNA of the next generation. You see, empires fall, trends fade, algorithms change, but authenticity, that's forever. And that's the lesson every artist, every fan, every person watching this needs to carry. That greatness isn't about noise, it's about resonance. Because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the one that's remembered. It's the one that meant something. Thanks for watching. Remember to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. And as always, stay active,